move along to our other speaker. A member who's from Minneapolis will discuss exploring Bygdelags for genealogy research. And Alan, it turns out that a couple of the people on the call, including Alan, are cousins, although we haven't quite figured out how we're connected. But it's interesting. So Alan started exploring the logs around in the Midwest, in Minnesota and Wisconsin, and has some interesting observations about the Bygdelags. Alan?
Can you guys see my screen now?
Yes.
For some reason, I can't control it. I can't go forward or backward. We were doing this an hour ago.
Yeah.
Should I?
You can probably go back to the PowerPoint, the main PowerPoint page.
And out of slideshow mode.
Yeah.
I think
Sometimes if you unshare and share again, it might work.
let me stop sharing and try again.
Yeah.
Okay, now if I share. And let's do this. And then if I go like that.
There you go.
That'll work.
That looks good.
There's
This presentation is
there's a way to make all that go away. There we go. All right. Okay. Okay. So I had the impression a few months ago that I don't live in the DC area. Joel and I and Tona here are distant cousins. Like Joel said, we don't know exactly how, but we're kind of close. We're getting pretty close. Anyway, I've been on these Zoom meetings for a few years now, and then all of a sudden, a few years ago, I was talking about logs, and it seemed like people didn't know what I was talking about. So my intention is to introduce you to logs, more specifically, I guess they're called Bygdelags, but people refer to them as logs in conversation. I didn't build this. By the way, my wife did the PowerPoint for me. I just gave her all the notes and whatnot. And I think I could probably ramble on for a long time, but I think what's important is the collection of links throughout the presentation. So as long as you have that, you get that PDF, you get all those links. That's kind of the important part of your exploration, I guess, in the direction you want to go. It doesn't do me much.
I will send out the PDF of this presentation after the meeting.
Okay.
Furiously write down notes.
It won't do you much good if I tell you what logs are. I mean, it's not going to help your family tree, Annie. It's just idle curiosity. But I see it more as my chance to entice you to come to the Midwest and attend these meetings, these annual meetings in the summertime. They're called Stevna, or Stevner plural, and which means basically reunion or meeting, something like that. And I think that's probably that's my perspective, is to maybe entice you to come and do that, and that would be something that might help you with your tree. Just hearing about logs is probably just anecdotal. So the movement, the Bygdelag movement, happened a long time, over 100 years ago. I had no idea. I just learned about these a year and a half ago. I belong to an organization called the Norwegian American Genealogical Association, which meets here in my town. And everybody wears a name tag when you go to a meeting, and they put, if you know, they'll put the area in Norway from where your people come from on the bottom of your name tag. So when you meet someone, oftentimes they'll say, "Oh, you're from Sogndal. Oh, you had people from Trøndelag," or something like that. And what happened was someone came up and introduced themselves, and they said, "Oh, did you go to the log in Sioux Falls this year?" And I said, "What's that? What's a log?" So that's where I am. That was a year and a half ago. And then I found out that there was a Hardanger log meeting in Sioux Falls just 2 months prior to this conversation. And then I missed it. So I looked into this, and I've been to a few meetings now as a result, and become members of multiple logs, actually. And it has everything to do with where in Norway your people are from. You want to find that log, because every log is going to have a library and kind of a amateur genealogist to go with it. They have meetings. Yeah, that's kind of your goal, is to get to know people. You might even find somebody you're related to, because it's about geography. Back in the day, these things were incredibly popular, I guess. For example, I was told this story where like 3,000 people showed up in a little town of Story, Iowa, that only had a couple thousand inhabitants back in the day. I don't know where they put all those people, but it was a big deal back then. And from what I gather, it wasn't about being Norwegian in commonality so much as where you were from. People wanted to gather with others who came from the same area, had that commonality. Being Norwegian was kind of second best. So there's a link there that defines Bygdelag. I think I already. It's a geographical area, but you can explore that later on. There's a book specifically written about it by Ed Lovell from. He was on the faculty at St. Olaf in Northfield, Minnesota. You probably recognize that name. There's a book review about that book, that link, called Book Review, and there's about a 2-page description of the book, and that'll give you a really good feel for what logs are all about in the past, how they kind of began. I'm a little bit yeah, I don't know a lot of the history yet. I just haven't been around long enough, but clearly they were much bigger and much more popular than they are now, and they've consolidated greatly in the last 120, 30 years. And now, instead of individual logs, there'll be groups of logs that have consolidated into a bigger one. And just to survive, I guess. And today, as I see it, there are a handful of larger logs, and in one overall group over all of them. The overall group is called Fellesrad, and then there will be larger logs under that you can be you'll be a member of Fellesrad, you can be a member of a larger log, and you can be a member of the individual logs under there. So within a short amount of time, I became a member of quite a few logs, whether they had much, even so much as a newsletter or not, because we had the commonality. And at a Stevner, and a Stevner is their annual meeting, their annual reunion, and it's usually in the summer. It's in the Midwest. I'd almost venture to say they throw a dart at the map, anywhere within 150 miles of Northfield, Minnesota is probably fair game. Let's see. So I might have to skip around. Okay, so the next one, Fellas Rod is the overall umbrella group. And there are 29 existing logs now that I know of. And I think in the day there were 129 at the height of their popularity. Every year, 2 people from each log are sent to the Fellas Rod meeting, which is early May. And that meeting has a day of Zoom presentations that anybody can attend. And then the following day on a Saturday is their business meeting. And that's just the representatives get together for that business. But this Fellas Rod has a website, and that's the link. If we click on that, I want to explore that a little bit, but I'll come back to it. That's where you want to go to find things. Probably everything you need to know is going to be under that somewhere. It's not a very sophisticated or glitzy website, but if you just are patient and explore that, you'll find, hopefully you know where in Norway your people come from. That would be kind of key to getting connected to the right places. And ultimately, you'll find names and phone numbers or email addresses of presidents and editors and things like that. I'm going to skip ahead. We can come back to that. So again, there are some larger logs that have smaller ones under them. They have their own checking account and dues and library and genealogists and presidents and officers and board of directors. And they have artifacts. You might run into people you're related to. You're certainly going to have advice for your particular area that might be key to that area. There was interesting one I went to. The problem is when you go to these meetings, you have to choose which one to go to, because it's about a 4-hour period during the afternoon of a larger log meeting that you can choose which one to go to. And I tried to skip in on a couple of them, and there was one of them finally auctioned off an American flag that had 48 stars on it that had been coming to their meetings for all this time. And the person that had been responsible for it said, why don't we just get rid of this? And they auctioned it off. But how long ago was that? They're hanging on to these things, so who knows what other logs have. But people are trying to hang on to their history. The ones that have survived are all about the key people who want to keep them going, which is kind of how a lot of volunteer organizations work. Try and pull in help, pull in board of directors. I became a board of director for one of them myself last summer. Here are some examples of the bigger ones: Vestlands log, 7+ log, Flare log, and Sognefjord log. They all have their own Stevna in the summertime, and I think they all have smaller logs that fit under them. And they'll be in a list in another slide here. So it's usually a 3-day weekend. They book a block of rooms in a town. They'll have entertainment, they'll have tours, they'll have presentations, they'll cater meals, silent auctions. Sometimes they have vendors come in with soldier or antique wooden spoons or sweaters or tourist things. Yeah, and they're always big about getting the yearbook picture, so you want to be sure you sit in with your log. Here's a specific one, Vestlands log. There are several under this, and all of my people fit under this category. So I went to this one last year. Missed the one in Sioux Falls, how I found out about it, but I went to the one in Austin last summer. Austin, if you didn't know, is the home of Hormel and Spam, and so we had yeah, it was a fun weekend with all kinds of things to see and do and eat and etc. Well, when I went to the librarian for the Hardanger, which is under this Bestlands Lab, when I went to the Hardanger librarian to ask about this particular book here on the left, the Kvinharad Volume 4, because that book is hard to find physically. And I believe in Norway and America, there just aren't that many of them. And she said, no, so-and-so has a copy of that in a different lot. So I went there and they said, no, so-and-so has a copy of that in a different lot. So I ricocheted around a little bit. And sure enough, somebody at this Stevna last summer had a copy of it. And I got a chance to sit down and thumb through it and find my family in print, which was kind of fun. And the woman who had this under her care, her name was Cheryl, and somebody called her by name, Cheryl Hove, and a friend of mine that I used to fish with in the 80s and 90s was Paul Hove. I knew his wife was into Norwegian genealogy, so I asked her if her husband was Paul Hove, and she said, yeah, how do you know? Like, I used to fish with him all the time back in the day. I mean, you never know who you're going to meet. And then she started taking pictures of a Bygde book for someone else, and she was showing them something. And she said, "Oh, have you seen this before? It's you can translate a page of Norwegian with this app." Well, that's how I learned about Google Translate and the app that you can load on your phone and just take a picture of a page in your Bygde book, and bingo, you have the English right there. I I didn't know if I'd been living under a rock or what, but like everybody should know that, but I didn't. So it was another thing that I learned while I was, this was just these are a series of rocks that I just turn over by mistake or by accident, and then I get a windfall or something really good happens. This is a different, a little bit larger log, Sognefjord, and I have roots in this area, and this one happened to be in Lodi, Wisconsin. So we had different things, including we visited this church. I believe it was Norwegian built in 1960, and somebody had rehabbed it and did a beautiful job. And I guess they have occasional weddings in this church. It wasn't far out of Lodi. We visited a local winery and a Scandinavian shop, and we did a bunch of nice things. It was fun. I skipped one. Here's the subsequent one last summer, Spring Grove, same one. There's a Giants of the Earth museum in Spring Grove. I didn't know about. That's where we set up camp. They have a beautiful hall that was painted by a Norwegian painter. There are churches around the Midwest that were painted. The picture of Christ, the painted picture of Christ behind the altar in a lot of churches was this fella down here, Gausta, and there happened to be a church like 3 miles outside of town, so we all carpooled over there to have a look at it. I mean, I never would have heard of this guy and his background and the kind of things that he did. We had musical people come and entertain us. The great big picture in the background that's transparent is a shot of a farm. It was an original farm right on the edge of town, Spring Grove, and one of the family members came and described his family's history, and the history of this existence of this farm. And we all drove there because the barn right here behind the silo was the original stone barn. It was pretty impressive for the time. And this newer barn over here was built, and they cut a big hole in the side of it right there and put a huge barn door, and there's a stage on the inside of it. And it's now a community theater. And people go there in one weekend in July, and the hillside here is kind of like an amphitheater, and people pull out their lawn chairs and watch a performance one weekend a year. So I hope to go back and do that next July. It'd be kind of fun. Who knew? There's all kinds of things that are happening in my own backyard that I had no idea. Let's see. I had never heard of Ola and Pear. It was a Norwegian cartoon,
Mhm.
newspaper cartoon
Yep.
back over 100 years ago.
Yep.
Well, the Giants of their museum in Spring Grove bought the rights to that cartoon. So there's an exhibit in their museum dedicated just to that. So next year's is going to be in New Ulm, Minnesota, which is better known for German immigrants actually, but it just means the beer is going to be good. There's still some Norwegian stuff happening around there, and I've tried to help organize some of that already. So here's one that I have not been to. It's a bigger one, and here on the right you can see the smaller logs that fit under that one. And if you go to that Fellows Road website, you'll find all these things, and you'll find there's a map. So if you don't recognize a name, you don't need to. You can correlate between the map and the names to find which ones might appeal to you. Here's another one. I intended to go to this one. I have no family connection to this log or these smaller logs under it, but there was a speaker. Oh, what was his name? He wrote the book In Cod We Trust. What was his name? Anyway, he was one of the speakers, and I was going to go up to Fargo, or Moorhead, I should say. It's the Minnesota side, for the weekend, just to go to the presentations. I got a load of the schedule, and I think a wedding or a funeral got in my way. Otherwise, I would have gone. And this coming summer, there's going to be in Wilmer, which is kind of central Minnesota. There's always a Norwegian log week, and it's either before or after Rootstack in Salt Lake. I've never been there myself, but I know this year it's the week after, and the hotel is right adjacent to the Rootstack location. So in my quest to entice you back to the Midwest, here are two pages of other not log things that you might be interested in. NAGA is the North American Genealogical Association. So this is in my town. They have presentations, just like we have presentations, only they're a hybrid Zoom and in person. And this is where I found out what logs were all about. Somebody approached me and said, "Oh, you're from Hardanger. Did you go to the log meeting?" And I had no idea what they're talking about. But they have monthly meetings, and unfortunately, they coincide with this meeting. So typically, I go there for 1 hour and bug out and sneak into the library, and then I attend this meeting via Zoom. There are a lot of Sons of Norway lodges, even just in the Twin Cities. They have different kind of themes, if you will. I know one likes to dress up and play Viking, which wasn't my thing. And I joined another one as an affiliate, and they have presentations and Christmas dinners and, probably everything that you would expect. NAHA is Norwegian American Historical Association. on the St. Olaf campus in Northfield. They have archives and lots and lots of documentation about Norwegian American history. And you would want to make sure that you just don't walk in the door. You need to schedule an appointment with them. Of course, there's Vesterheim. They have a brand new building that I've not been to myself. I plan to go here this year. They have an inside museum and an outside museum with buildings. They have also folk school classes. I made some soldier myself a year ago or so in a class. They have all kinds of stuff. I mean, cooking, rose malling, jewelry, wood carving, woodworking, I think knife making, timber frame building. They have a lot of possibilities, and just look at their website. Norway House is in Minneapolis, as is Mindekirchen. They share the same city block. The whole city block is owned by Norwegian. And they have things like concerts at Norway House. They have, it's more of a contemporary situation, not so much for genealogy, although they do have a library in the basement that they're building. And what I'm finding is a lot of logs are lending their libraries to Norway House. So they can live there and be of value to anybody, public. Go down there and look through books. And then during a log weekend or something special, they go and collect their books and take them to the log meeting and then return them. I don't think they've all done that, but I know that a few have already. So that's in the basement of Norway House. Mindekirchen is a big old Norwegian church. And they have luncheons, they have sales, they have I think they have some entertainment stuff. You just have to look at their website, see what's going on. There's another genealogical center in Madison. I'm sure Joel could tell you a lot more about that. The University of North Dakota has a fantastic library. It was previously a private collection, and now it's under the auspice of UND. I've been there many times to go through not just Bygde books. They have quite a few things related to Norwegian and Norwegian American history. Be another reason to come to the area. Minnesota Historical Society, downtown St. Paul. They have events all year long. It's not just Norwegian. It's anything and everything under the sun. Occasionally, it's specifically Norwegian, but they have a lot of documentation. They have a library as well. Giants of the Earth is in Spring Grove, where we had our meeting last summer. The Kensington Runestone Museum in Alex. Hemkomst is I don't know if you knew about this. A fellow built recreated a Viking ship. And he actually passed away, but that ship was sailed to Norway, and it now resides in this museum. I want to say that was in the 70s. I don't remember. It's been a long time since I've been to that museum. And it has other things too. It has a stave church outside. It's a bit smaller than the ones you'll find in Norway, but it's interesting as well. Coon Valley in Dane County. I have not been here, but Dane County, if you've done much genealogy about Norwegian, I got to believe you run into that. It was like a huge draw of Norwegians early on for immigration. And there's a nature center there that I'd like to go to myself. All the states are going to have their own archives, and usually they're somewhere near the capital in that state. There's North Postfest in Minot. I've never been there myself. I'm tempted, but it sounds so crowded. Like so many Norwegians show up. you almost have to have a reservation like years in advance or something. I'll try it one of these days, but that one I suggest you do your homework well in advance. And last but not least, the Minnesota State Fair is an excellent reason to come here. It's huge. You could go there for 2 or 3 days and never retrace your steps. I love it. It's the best junk food venue you'll probably ever go to. Let's see. If you are looking for old churches that you suspect still exists, Norwegian built churches, I would suggest getting hold of like city council or something like that as close as you can to see if you can find out more about them. Oftentimes they were destroyed. Sometimes they were just sold and became a house or a shop. Occasionally they were kept and a new church was built on the same property, and the old one is just kind of kept alive for special occasions, if you will, Christmas or weddings or things like that. I've done a lot of cemetery walking around the Midwest to find my people, and I've had pretty good luck with it just with find a grave. But if it's I'd rather not walk an entire cemetery, and I've had pretty good luck. If nothing else, you can call a local funeral home nearby and say, who's the sexton of this cemetery? And they'll know. They'll probably put you in contact. They may even have the records of where exactly to walk in that cemetery to find your headstone. I've had quite a bit of luck that way all around Minnesota and the Midwest for that matter. So I think that's okay. That's questions. Those are some shots from the state fair. Corn dog, you gotta have a corn dog. So I wanted to go back quick. Oh, I'm way over. This website is what I wanted to point you to. The Fellows Road website. This is what you need to explore. And this is where you're going to find the calendar for things, the maps. All these things are going to be here. It's not very sophisticated. You basically are scrolling up and down the same page with these menus. But here's a good way to find a log and click on that log, for example, and say, I want to go there. And it's in yellow. So it's telling you that it's under the Vestlands log, the bigger one. And under that is Hordaland with these four and Sognefjord and those. So I belong to quite a few of those now that I look at them, because this is where my roots come from. But yours could be any one of these. And eventually you're going to get to, let's pick one.
We're only seeing the slide. We aren't seeing the web page.
Oh. Well, that's unfortunate. I don't know how to do that.
You need
Well,
to.
the upshot is to explore that page. You'll find things. It's not that big. It's not that sophisticated. You'll find maps and lists. And eventually what I want you lead you to is a name and an email address, the president of a log, and say, hey, I'm interested in your newsletter. I'm interested in attending a log meeting. Can you send me some information? Can you send me your last newsletter? That kind of thing. Let's see, how do I gotta go back to my, can you see that now?
No,
Where are you seeing right now?
I think you have to stop sharing the slideshow.
yeah, you have to get out of PowerPoint.
Okay. Now I'm back to regular.
Yeah, and now you can go to the website.
You gotta share your screen again and with PowerPoint closed and
Oh, you want to do this? I don't mind, but we're way over time. Well, people can just drop off if that's kind of
Well, why don't we see it? Okay.
Can you see that?
Mm. Yes,
Okay. All right. So, oh, but now I can't manipulate it. Well, that doesn't help. I I don't remember what I clicked on to get here, but you'll find maps like this. And if you click on number 5, you're going to go to Upland log. And eventually you're going to find information about that log. That's the path you want to do. Pick the ones that you're interested in, find the president or the editor or whoever's web or email is there and contact them and say you're interested. I'd like to, could you send me your last newsletter? Could you tell me about the upcoming log meeting next summer? That kind of thing. And then, or could you put me in contact with your librarian? I want to find out if you have this specific book. That kind of thing. That's kind of what it's all about, is finding your logs and connecting with those people, and hopefully that moves your family tree along. And it's just kind of fun thing to do. There are presentations and tours and stuff like that. Little musical entertainment, food. Who doesn't like open face sandwiches? Cookies. Some of them have some pretty substantial vendors. I got a feeling that this one woman, she goes around to estate sales and snaps up soldier and wooden spoons and sweaters. And then she brings them to some of these and sells them. And bunads.
Yeah. Why don't we see if there are a few questions?
There's, just for fun, I don't know if you can see that or not, but here's a newsletter for Veslan. It has a lot of it to do with last summer's meeting. Here's a series of brochures for different Stevna that I've attended for this particular one, with the schedules and the itinerary, etc., where, when and where. Here's another log I belong to. This is the one that I became a board of director on. Vestland or Vesterheim, I get their stuff. I'm a member of them. There's a reason to come to the Midwest. Here's Naga's newsletter, how I found out about logs to begin with. They have monthly presentations and they're on Zoom as well. And I joined the Giants of the Earth Museum, so I get their occasional newsletter as well. This is the outfit that bought the Pear and Ola, Ola and Pear cartoon. The director, his name is Bill Fried. He's not from that county, but he sure knows a lot about the Norwegian history of that county. It was after Dane County in Wisconsin got fully populated with Norwegians, the first place they went was Spring Grove, Minnesota. That was the first Norwegian settlement. That's its claim to fame. And that's why, and it's not far from Decorah. It's a half-hour drive, maybe at most, something like that. And Bill knows a lot about Norsk, what do they call it? Norsk Ridge, and why people settled, where the springs were.
Norwegian Ridge.
Okay. And that there are a whole bunch of springs that lead into the little rivers that divide the countryside there, and why they built their farms where they did. I mean, in the morning you had to send somebody to the spring and get some water, right? So they're no dummies. They're and it's a beautiful country just to drive around, frankly. It's not like I'm used to in Iowa. It's rolly and got streams and a lot of hardwoods and stuff like that. Have I enticed anybody to take a vacation to Minnesota?
Actually, I've been to a lot of those places. I've been to the Minnesota State Fair and to the Vesterheim and to Hostfest and to the museum in Moorhead, the Viking Ship Museum. Quite a long time ago. I'd love to go back after hearing you talk.
The fair is fun, but it doesn't coincide. It doesn't sister up next to a log.
Yeah.
You'd have to be here for a little bit longer.
I-
The
I've been
logs
to,
are. Go ahead.
I've been to a number of them. The problem I have is that I've got family links to many of them, and their stivnas are spread out in the course of the summer, so it's hard living in Georgia to try to
Right.
get back up there for these scattered weeks. But it is fun, and I certainly have learned a lot when I've been able, especially when they have a genealogist and some of their books. That those times have been highly useful.
Yeah. I just had fun with people. I'm not terribly social. You might not think that, but I actually opened up and had fun with the people that I met in my. You never know. You might share the same great grandparents.
Yeah.
Just a question, do they do any Zoom or is this all in person?
The log meetings are typically in person.
Yeah.
The Fellows Road, the big one, the overall umbrella, it has the day before the business meeting is a Friday, and that day is full of presentations, and those are Zoom. Anybody can jump in on that. And if you go to the Fellows Road website, you can see the last 3 years worth of presenters that have had those Zoom meetings, so you can get an idea of why you should set aside that Friday in May.